Hello, everybody. I'm here with my good friend Max Komes. I believe that we met through YouTube. I think you commented on one of my videos, and then from there we connected on Instagram and did a bunch of calls together. But anyways, we're in a very similar, I guess, field or profession, and interested in just very, very similar things in general. And yeah, I guess, in like the life coaching field. You're in a counseling field, very, very similar. So yeah, we're just gonna talk about that today. What makes coaching and counseling and therapy so important? How we see the profession evolving over the years, and also, like, I guess, really at its core, like, what facilitates human transformation at the end of the day. How does a human actually transform their life and transform their consciousness? So I guess we'll be talking about that today. We'll probably be sharing some of our personal experiences as well. But anyways, thank you so much for being here, Max. If you want to give a short introduction to you, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I appreciate you setting this up. And
Mm-hmm.
we did meet on YouTube. I commented on one of your videos, and I think you were one of the only people who actually had videos on transpersonal psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And I started commenting, and you actually commented back. I'm like, I'm just gonna go ahead and message this guy. I'm like, I'm gonna make a connection because I don't have many connections of people who actually talk about these kinds of concepts. And we hit it off on things like Ken Wilber
Mm-hmm.
and Maslow's hierarchy and transpersonal therapies and um, like transcendentalism. Period. But yeah, man, my name is Max Komes. I am a registered mental health counselor intern in the state of Florida, and I have my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. Um, yeah, where would you like me to go from there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was like when you said that, like, I was one of the only people to talk about transpersonal psychology. I find that, like, within the field of psychology, like the transpersonal, the transcendent, and spiritual aspects, like that's what's talked about the least. So naturally, when we had a common interest in that, like, we instantly became like such good friends, like huge connection, and then we've just kept building from there, leading to today, to this discussion. So that's really cool, and that ties into kind of like the holistic approach behind things, incorporating spirit and transcendentalism, which we'll touch upon a bit today. But I guess the first thing we could go into is, how what made you pursue a career in counseling and wanting to improve people's mental health? Just a brief explanation of your journey, maybe.
Yeah, man. So the the first thing that pops in my mind is that I originally went to school for radiation therapy. I got my bachelor's degree in the health sciences ultimately, but I at first went through this program that was training me to be a radiation therapist, and that was up north. I went to school in Iowa, and I started noticing. I looked at the field around me. I noticed we were treating up to 40 patients plus a day, and we weren't really getting anywhere with treatments. People were having secondary malignancies from the radiation, and the nurses were really rushed, and the doctors were extremely impersonal, and the therapists were the same way. And I got really disheartened with all of it. And that's not to say that radiation and chemotherapy and the mainstream medicine doesn't have its place. There's a time and place for palliative treatment and utilization of these treatments, but what I saw ultimately wasn't working. But what I did see that worked was, since I was a student, I would take our patients back to their rooms, and in between sessions, I got to really deeply spend time with them. And I remember sitting and genuinely just listening to their stories. And of course, this is a time in their life when they have these terminal illnesses, potentially fatal diagnoses, and they started to open up and pour their hearts out and tell their stories and how they got to where they are. And it was almost as though just by listening to them, you could see the baggage come off, and they would unfold, and it was like they were healing right in front and right before my very eyes. It was really miraculous. And, radiation and chemo were said to be miraculous treatments. And then I saw this thing that was very simple of just being there for them, and that was just as healing. So it started to make me think, okay, there's something deeper here that we can actually use, that's more holistic, as you're saying. And for a while, I just completely left mainstream medicine. I got out of the field. I got really disheartened with it. And I moved 1,000 miles away from home. I moved to the southern United States. I moved to Florida and just started kind of living a life of curiosity, exploration, and I started looking into what actually does heal people. And that question just kind of burned in me from working in the hospitals. I got into things like meditation. I already had done meditation for a very long period of time. I knew it had worked for my own ADHD, but it brought me into things like the yoga world and how we can focus on these certain parts of our bodies and really heal ourselves from the inside out. And visualization and mantra, these things have been around for thousands and thousands of years in spiritual and religious settings. But in modern health, we don't really recognize them. They seem very woo-woo or out there. And the more I looked into these topics, the more I found they actually healed, and they just weren't really translated into modern psychological language. So I think that's part of a lot of what I do is just kind of translate this world into modern psychological terms, and do that. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Beautiful story. Like being in like the hospital setting where everything's so rushed. I have a couple friends who are kind of in that setting as well, and they describe something very similar where everything is so rushed. And what makes what you say so beautiful is that like, just by people sharing and opening up and having someone listen to them and hear them and see them, that's like you said, all of the baggage comes off, and there's so much healing in just expressing your truth and having someone be there to listen for you. So that's beautiful, and yeah, that catalyzed this huge journey for you. And now, what I understand is that you just got your master's in counseling, right?
Correct. Yeah. Eventually, I went through all the yoga stuff and the meditation, and I was in this very free point in my life. I was living kind of a hippie-ish lifestyle, but I wanted to gain structure again. I'm like, okay, there's got to be a way to bridge my past, these things that really influenced me with this lifestyle that I see as free and healing. So I kind of bridged the two worlds. I went back to school, and I kind of sucked it up and went through the mainstream system again. Although I saw these flaws, and we've touched on this before, um, but your professors didn't really acknowledge things like the transpersonal side of psychology or the holistic side of psychology, and my professors definitely did not either, or most of them did not. And um, so it brought me back to the field of psychology, and that the mind is the origin of things, that we can begin to look at our thoughts and emotions and sensations from this outside point of view, maybe from this witness standpoint from behind, and from that place start to heal again from the inside out. And there's so many words and for this in the East that the West doesn't have language for. Maybe in Buddhism you have stuff like illuminated mind or Buddha nature, or even in Hinduism like the Atma Brahma kind of complex, where we have soul and God, but that gets very religious and has these heavy connotations in the West. So finding the language again, the closest thing we have maybe for that witness perspective is self is context, which was who coined that term? The guy that created acceptance and commitment therapy in the 1980s. Um, he uses self as context as opposed to self as content. Like, we are not the content of our minds, we are not the thoughts, we are not the emotions, but we are something that observes from behind that. And it seems that the more we connect with that thing, the observer, we become more aware, and hence more autonomous in our lives. And it boggles my mind that this isn't a common theme in modern psychology, because it seems like the core thing that, again, makes us more autonomous and in control of ourselves. Is this making sense?
Yeah, it's making 100% sense. And this is completely something that shocks me too, about how, I guess in my experience growing up and going through school, elementary, middle, high school, college, there was really nothing at all about mindfulness and I guess what we can call this more like witness consciousness, which is just abiding in the awareness that is just
Yeah.
aware of all of the content that kind
Yes.
of disidentifies with the content, and you're just the awareness. No one ever taught me that in school. No one ever showed me that. And I guess this more spiritual transcendent realm, that's kind of the branch of psychology which we call transpersonal psychology.
Yeah.
And in my experience, the department head of psychology at my university I went to actually had never heard of transpersonal psychology, and there were no classes at all in the psychology department that even touched upon this whatsoever. There were a couple classes in the religious studies department that maybe touched on this. I don't know. I never took any of those, but it just really shocked me how there's just nothing in mainstream about what we're talking about here. It really shocked me and made me, one, a bit disillusioned, but also two, really inspired to make this something that's more known and really integrate it into the helping professions, whether that be coaching, counseling, therapy. So I guess I'm interested to hear how you integrate this into your counseling practice. And also, I'm also interested to hear, maybe just for the audience knowledge, to hear about the difference between, coaching, counseling, and therapy. So, yeah, just wherever you want to take that from
Sure.
there.
Yeah, I'll start out with that coaching counseling question. And so mental health counseling requires a master's degree. People get a license through the state, whatever state that they live in, and then once they get the licensure, then it's also okay, let me take a step back. So a master's degree, internship, there's a total 200, 300 hour, oh man, not more than that. What am I thinking? 1,500 hour. It's like 1,500 to 2,000 hours worth of person to person contact. And then you apply for intern or full licensure with the state. So master's degree, long internship, state licensure. Um, as opposed to maybe coaching, it's not as regulated. So there are larger coaching organizations that I know that try to make it an aim to regulate coaching a little bit more. But overall, it's not a state or federal regulated thing. So there's less of a sense of, what do I want to say, holding people accountable for ethics and rules and regulations versus counselors. We are required to go through for like 10 years of school plus get these state and federal licensures, and they want to make sure that you're actually in accordance to the rules and regulations of the state. And that can either be constricting, or it can be a very it shows that that person's actually educated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So yeah, it's counseling. It's something that's a bit more regulated, and I know
100%.
with coaching, like coaching's become a pretty new thing within the past 10 years. I mean, like 10 years ago, not many people considered coaching as like a valid thing, and now we see all these people like on Instagram and influencers claiming to be coaches. And I do want to emphasize it is becoming a bit more regulated. I mean, anyone can still call themselves a
Right.
coach or whatever, but there is an organization called the ICF, International Coaching Federation, which does accredit people. I'm going through one of these programs right now through the Integral Coaching, and so it is, yeah, in that regard, I guess becoming a bit more regulated and mainstream. But I guess something that I wanted to touch upon just between the difference between coaching and counseling and therapy is, at least with coaching, it's very like growth oriented. It's about I guess the way that I see it, like self actualization, helping people reach a goal that they're striving towards in their life. Whereas the more therapeutic lens is like when you go to therapy, you're suffering from a mental disorder, and therapy is much more healing oriented, whereas maybe we can say coaching is growth oriented. Of course, there's like similarity between the two. In healing, there is growth, but I think that's the way I've been framing it in my mind, is just coaching, growth, therapy, healing. So I'm curious, just with counseling, if it's like where it falls under that umbrella.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. The coaching kind of made this bigger presentation in the modern day because maybe psychotherapy was missing this piece of growth orientation. So modern psychotherapy, yeah, we do tend to focus on the past and diagnosis and the disease model, which again is part of it's good and bad. Diagnosis allows us to look at a label and figure out what's actually going on with the patient. But we also have to emphasize that that person is not that label. They are growing beyond that, and they're much more than that. And so psychotherapy maybe sometimes gets stuck in the past and tends to ruminate. If you spend too much time there, then it just turns into cyclical thoughts, and that person is just always that, thinking that they are that. Versus coaching sprouted out of this need for action oriented or solutions oriented solutions, and that is focused on, I guess, structure, goals, vision, smart goals. How do we get to that ideal vision in the future, and then maybe looking at what's holding you back. So I really try to combine the two orientations within my own style of therapy because people are just in different phases of their lives, man. Some people are going to need the healing aspect, correct. Some people just need to get their ass in gear and genuinely develop structure and discipline, and they need a little bit of, what do I want to say? What's the word I'm looking for? Help from the therapist or the coach.
Just like action oriented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like solution, and not just talking to get their thoughts out. Maybe some people, they just need to be heard, but
They
I
want
think for many
solutions.
people it's like they need that, but they also need structure, action to actually move forward.
Yeah, I was listening to, I think it was on Chris Williamson podcast not too long ago, and he did say something like that. It's almost disincentivized in modern therapy to be future oriented. It only looks towards these past
Interesting.
emotional situations. But again, if we ruminate on that and we focus on it too much, then that's all we're going to become. We have to eventually put ourselves in the seat of what are our values? What do we want to see as a product of all the creation that we do? And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What Chris Williams says is that sometimes you can just, I mean, yeah, maybe with therapy we be stuck in the present, and I think totally for some people they just need to get their thoughts out. They need to let out these emotions, and then that's super healing for them. But then, yeah, of course, I think for other people they need, one, yes, to get their thoughts out, and two, action based on that too. So I think that's very beautiful that you're kind of combining those, I guess, two modalities into your practice. And
Accountability.
yeah.
Accountability was the word I was looking for because at first on the journey, it's like, okay, what steps do I take? I know I want to grow.
Mhm.
And then it's, you need to bounce the ideas off of somebody who has already been down the path
Mhm.
and do that with them. Okay, here's what's going on inside. This is kind of where I have an idea. And then the therapist or the coach helps structure that with that
Mhm.
person.
Yeah. And how does that manifest in a session for you? I mean, I think what we're getting at here is just an overall more holistic approach to like the helping profession. So, just what does that look like for you, and how does that contrast with like, maybe a, cognitive behavioral therapy or something like that? Like, how does that look for you, and what makes it different? I guess.
It's obviously going to be different for every person,
Hmm.
person's needs that come into therapy. Um, Again, maybe some people just want to figure out why am I so anxious all the time, or why do I feel this sense of depression, and they're looking for this sense of meaning and purpose, or that they've been holding on to something from childhood that they haven't really been conscious of, and they're bringing that to the surface and understanding themselves. Ultimately, it's about understanding themselves on the deepest levels possible, so they can bring the unconscious conscious and start to craft their own narratives and move forward, truly take control of their own lives and choose something for themselves. And I suppose with that holistic orientation that you're talking about, I really try to focus on that mindfulness based stuff that we were talking about earlier, those mindfulness based solutions. Okay, it's not just your thoughts and emotions. You do have something observing from the background that is consistently with you. And over time, if you focus on that, if you do the meditative practices or mindfulness practices, then that becomes you. You're more in control. You become the driver of your chariot, so to speak, the driver of the car, and the horses of emotions and thoughts aren't as much in control. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it sounds like you're just helping people become more aware of themselves and to kind of become more aware of and detach from these just kind of reactionary, I guess, egoic impulses that they have. Helping people be more free, because I
Sure.
guess the way I see freedom is like if you're just kind of reacting out of this unconscious habitual pattern, then you don't have true freedom of your life. You're not the driver of the chariot, like you say. So it sounds like just through helping people become more aware of these patterns, giving them actual solutions, you're helping them, you're equipping them with skills and capabilities to actually allow them to be the driver of their life and live a life that's in alignment with their values.
And alongside that, really crafting a narrative for themselves as well.
Yeah.
Stories are really impactful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the stories we tell ourselves from the past. Um, okay, maybe I went through some really traumatic stuff. Maybe I didn't have a great father who was there for me all the time. Maybe I didn't grow up with a father. But that made you potentially more resilient. That made you learn these things later on in life, that made you more structured and you wanted to see more progress in your own life, and then that story from the past becomes your present story. You have to look for the growth oriented focus in your narrative.
So beautiful. And the stories we tell ourselves are everything. Because I mean that goes back to what we were talking about, how if we just take the stories and the scripts that we're telling ourselves at face value and we don't examine it, again, like that's not true freedom. And in that, it's kind of just this unconscious thing that you're just living, for better or for worse. And I guess with this kind of more holistic approach where you're kind of taking a step back in your awareness, identifying with the observer, you're just becoming aware of it. And I see awareness as the first step to actually getting in there and changing what's actually driving you in life and motivating you.
100%. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, there's layers to this holistic orientation as well, because I have to say that I'm not a dietitian or a physical therapist or anything, but these components also play a huge part in mental health. What we're eating all the time, how we're sleeping, are you actually moving your body? Um, are you getting sunlight? Are you challenging yourself? I think a lot of the times people are anxious and ruminating in their own thoughts because they haven't actually set a goal for themselves. And the mind fucking loves challenges. It looks for things to solve. And if we don't give it something to solve, then it's going to ruminate on all these other problems that it thinks it has. Does that make
It's so
sense?
so beautiful. How the mind loves challenges. I mean,
Yeah,
I might shift topic slightly with what I'm about to say
sure.
here, but in integral theory, and there's kind of this notion behind it that the universe life has this like evolutionary drive
Hmm.
towards more openness, more love, more flexibility, and it makes me think when the mind naturally loves challenges, it's like that growth component. It's like very in line with that evolutionary impulse of, I guess, the cosmos to move forward into greater openness, greater love, greater peace, greater harmony with itself, and that's beautiful. It's just beautiful how you say
It,
it, and that's just my thoughts about it.
it seems to be a natural law. If you look at a seed, and if a seed is planted, then it has
Hmm.
this husk, but the little stem on the inside has to break through the husk and push
Yes.
through the dirt,
Hmm.
and everything, trees grow upwards towards the sun. They strain themselves to grow up. It's not an easy thing, but it's like Sisyphus rolling the boulder
Hmm.
up the hill. We have to put meaning behind it. Why are we going through the struggle? And again, if we don't choose the struggle, then life will choose the struggle for us. So,
Yes.
what are we gonna do?
Yes. I love that analogy. Like in life, I mean, in my life at least, and I think in most people's life, it's like their suffering, their challenges are what actually is giving them that meaning and is actually what's bringing about most of the change.
Hmm.
And by kind of consciously creating goals and challenges for our growth and having this meaning behind it, it just makes the journey of life all that much more meaningful and fun and fulfilling.
Yeah, and for me, the Buddhist Four Noble Truths pop up, right? The fourth
Mm-hmm.
noble truth is that there is a way out of suffering. It
Mm-hmm.
exists, and there is a way out of it. But the way out of it is to be equanimous. To be in the center and say, yeah, pain exists, happiness exists, and I'm not going to attach to any of them. It's all part of the process that allows me to become whoever I want or whatever I want to be.
I love that so much. I love these conversations just about awareness building, life purpose, all of it. Um, what are I'm curious. Maybe we can shift a second. What are some, I guess, experiences maybe that you've had with clients, like a breakthrough or just some positive experiences that come about through your work with clients?
Hmm. I love seeing the aha moments in people, obviously. Um, One of my most memorable ones is I tend to work with younger men in their late teens, early 20s. And this isn't something that I've chosen. I don't advertise myself that or
Mm-hmm.
as a men's therapist by any means, but for some reason younger men tend to gravitate towards me, I suppose because I am a younger man and they don't want to talk to somebody that's 60
Yeah,
years old wearing a
I can
sweater
relate.
vest or talk to a female therapist maybe because it reminds them of their mom who nags at them like so good
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm a good solution therapeutically for them because they can actually open up and feel comfortable. Um, but younger men tend to be very logical in these early stages of their life. They're really working through these big questions of who am I and what am I going through and so what is the world?
Mm-hmm.
What is my purpose here? What's my place? And I love those existential questions and sitting and working through these with them and them having these big aha moments of, um, wow, you know what? I do have unique attributes to myself. I do play a unique part, and all these interests that I have can really contribute to the world. Well, that's a really beautiful thing. Um, I have one client that's popping into my head in particular who really loved writing, and uh, I think I did therapy with him for 7 months, and he made a ton of progress going from not being able to leave his bed from prior, post COVID. That really took a toll on him. It was working from home. He couldn't get out of bed. He wasn't exercising. He ate like crap, and he was looking for something again just to get him going. And the guy was unbelievably imaginative. He would come up with these stories, and you could visualize them with him. As he spoke into these vivid pictures. I'm like, man, you are a beautiful storyteller. You're made to be a writer or a playwright." And he's like, "Yeah, it's one of my favorite things. I love writing and telling stories." And like, that, okay, then do it. And then it's working through those little blocks of,
Hmm.
oh man, in my childhood, the kids made fun of me and said I wasn't good enough, and then my teachers said I was a terrible writer, and my mom told me I should be a doctor, and you know, all these things that say that I can't do this, and then slowly helping him break through all those barriers and make a schedule for himself. I'm gonna write, and despite all these voices from the past, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And then slowly seeing him do that over time and embrace the concept that, man, I am a writer, and it's possible to go down that route. He had one big aha moment that was something like, he I didn't even he said something like, I didn't even know it was a possibility to go down that route and be successful doing it. So just by me asking him, what if it worked out? What if being a writer worked out for you? He's like, I never thought of it before. And just that opened up this entire world for him of possibility. Beautiful stuff.
That is really beautiful. I'm like feeling like very happy and alive just hearing that story. From like being in bed in COVID, not even being able to get up, to like having this like sense of like meaning and purpose behind being a writer. It just makes me happy to know that someone that you facilitated change in someone's life like that. That's just so beautiful.
I love the job that I do, and I also have to say that my job is specifically to be a space holder, as simple as it sounds.
Hmm.
I have to be as clear and non-judgmental and compassionate as possible to allow that person to be whatever they'd like to be. And that's very person-centered Rogerian therapy.
Hmm.
But I think it's true. The more authentic I am, and the more I allow the other person to be authentic, no matter what they're feeling, then safety ensues,
Yes.
and they're allowed to grow from that place. I think Roger said something like, the paradox is, once I fully accept myself, then I can change.
I love that. You just help people accept themselves, be non-judgmental. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hallmark of being in a helper role, is just having that unconditional positive regard for another human. I think that's Carl Rogers who coined that term, unconditional positive regard.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
always wanting the best for the other person and just being there for them in this non-judgmental, loving, compassionate way. I think that's like the fuel that you know, yeah, I kind of have problems with the analogy, but the fuel behind it.
It sounds like a very simple role as well, but it
Hmm.
takes a lot of, and it is simple. It's simple, but like things that are simple are not easy, is how the quote goes, right? Um, but that takes us continuously reflecting and doing our own inner work and being somewhat of a contemplative, because if we're if we have any kind of discrimination or judgment to any parts of ourselves or other people, then that comes off in the therapy setting. It
Exactly.
potentially
Hmm.
creates the space where uh, if they feel judged in any manner, then they close off or start to close off, even on a subconscious level. So the more accepting we are of every part of ourselves and what's going on in other people, then it allows everybody to be able to flourish. A lot of inner work.
So beautiful. And I think, yeah, to be a therapist or counselor or coach, that is so necessary. Like, it's an absolute essential to have that loving, compassionate presence, and also, of course, be doing the work in yourself, realizing, becoming aware of your own judgments, your own projections, your own biases, and in the session, not projecting that onto the other person, letting them be completely, fully as they are, letting them know
Correct.
they're safe to be that way. At least when I mean, what made me realize that, like, for sure that I want to go into a helping profession was this class that I took in college, which was called the Helping Relationship, where we basically the whole entire semester, uh, we were basically just doing kind of, I guess you can say, therapy to each other, where like for 30 minutes, one of us would be the speaker, one of us would be the therapist, and then the other two are basically like analyzing and listening and providing feedback. And I realized in that I carried a lot of projections in the work that I was doing, and that I have to find a way to be free of those projections in session. And I've worked through a lot of that. I'm not going to say I'm completely free of it, but like just like being in that role, like makes you just hyper aware of all of the baggage that you have as well, because you carry that with you into the session.
100%. What do you think helps you break through those projections that you're talking about?
I mean, it's what immediately comes to my mind is the stuff that we were talking about earlier. Is like just awareness, reflecting on it, just kind of being in that kind of witness of it, and yeah, just reflecting on it and constantly asking, like, is this okay to bring into a session? Is this okay to say in the moment? And I don't know, like I find what has switched in me in between being a beginner into improving was that I was so in my mind in like the beginning sessions. Like I was constantly wondering, am I saying the right thing? Am I, asking the right question? Am I really helping them? And when I'm so in my mind, that's also when I'm in my projections and in my judgments as well. That's when they come out. But I feel like I've developed this kind of, I guess, capacity within me to really be just fully there with the client, like kind of like my awareness, my consciousness, like merging with them in a sense, like the mind
Yeah.
kind of just shuts off in that. And when the mind shuts off in that, I don't think my projections and my judgments come out nearly as much as they do before. So in a sense, it's kind of like, I guess, mindfulness training to focus on the client, really just be there with them. Before, I think I was just kind of trying to be there with them, but like sort of just kind of a step back in my awareness a little bit, where I was like kind of in my own everyday mode of operation in the mind, thinking, oh, should I say this? Should I say that? But I guess it's different now. It takes on a different flavor to really have that compassionate, non-judgmental, loving awareness for someone. You kind of, in a sense, you have to like merge with them in that session. Is that making sense?
100%,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think at the early levels of being a coach or a therapist, it is, you're still in that imposter syndrome kind of
Yeah.
feeling. Am I meant to do this? And you're still putting on the persona a little bit, and this is how a therapist or a coach should act. And I say wise things,
Yeah,
and you know what
totally.
I'm saying.
That's like the spiritual ego or like the therapist ego that you always try to be the best or say the best thing. And I think, yeah, that's how I started out.
It's very funny, but then eventually that starts to fade, that starts to
Hmm.
dissolve. And again, I'm obsessed with Carl Rogers recently. I'm reading his book on becoming a person, and he says that that is congruence. If we shed the mask, um, well, first and foremost, like we know when people are wearing a mask, right? It kind of irritates us in a way. It's like if you hear a television commercial and there's this very overacted voice, like it's, you can tell
Hmm.
that it's not actually their own voice or what they feel. Versus you can tell if someone is acting in congruence with what they think and how they feel. And the idea is to bring that as fully and deeply into the therapeutic conversation or setting as you can. And then it allows the other person to do the same thing. And there is a fine line because you maintain your own egoic structure. You know who you are as a person, but you also, like you said, simultaneously merge with this other person and you're immersed in their world. And if you don't have a solid sense of who you are and what you stand for, then it's pretty easy to get lost in that other person.
Yes. That's very beautifully said. Wow.
It's power.
I guess along this path of like cultivating this sort of just, I guess you can say like loving, compassionate awareness with a client, like how has that journey for you been between, I guess, the beginner to where you are now? I guess what challenges have you faced? I mean, obviously we talked about like, the therapeutic ego coming out, but what else do you have to say just about how you've improved over times and what challenges you faced?
The challenges that I've faced. I think a lot of it has to do with that imposter syndrome. Can I actually develop the confidence? Is this what I am supposed to do? Is this where I'm supposed to be? And for me, it's taken a constant reminder every day that, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. My whole life has kind of led up to this in a way. And again, crafting the narrative of these are the things that have led up to me being this, and this is the life that I've chosen. It's a continuous learning process, though, with what you're asking. I constantly have to think about other people's cultural upbringings. Where are they coming from? What societal or cultural influences are they coming from that I'm not aware of? So it's not just being with them, but maybe there's something I'm not even aware of that could be influencing the situation too. So I have to stay competent with culture. I have to stay competent with the 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 current unfolding of psychology and science. So I'm not behind its continuing education, and that's a constant challenge. But it's a beautiful challenge, and it goes back to our original conversation of we need these challenges to actually grow.
I love it. And yeah, I think being in this role, what's so beautiful about it is it demands that you continue to grow, you continue to expand, and it's like not this thing that you just do every day. I feel like I see like being in a helper role as more of like a way of being, and it's like we discussed, you're constantly challenging yourself, you're constantly learning more, like you have to be engaging in your own self-actualization too. And I know with me, like whenever I feel like there's something in my life that I'm like not giving my fullest to, or I know there's something in my life that I'm not attending to or not taking care of or just kind of pushing into my shadow, like the imposter syndrome within me kind of arises, like the imposter syndrome around being like a coach or helper. I'm like, shit, like I know like I'm not fully showing up for myself and for the world. Like how can I say I'm this person but I'm not fully doing that? And so it's really always challenged me and held me accountable to continue growing, because I guess when I don't, I guess that's kind of when the imposter syndrome comes back for me personally. Maybe there's some narrative in my ego there that I need to look into more, but it's something that I find.
No, I think that sounds very natural.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're wanting to follow a path, and you know the path that you want to go down, but your mind tells you when you're not on that path.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not living up to that fully. So of
Yeah.
course you're gonna feel maybe a little bit depressed or not fully capable or in that imposter syndrome because you're maybe slacking in XYZ areas, and it's like, all right, I gotta get on my shit again so I can actually be totally in a line with that place that I'm going. And I know it's kind of woo as well still, but that idea of the ideal self, and that we can really envision and embody something that we want to be, and hold that idea and vision in our entire being, and eventually we become that from the inside out. And I have to say it's woo but it's really not. The more that I think about it,
I don't think it should be woo woo. I hope people don't consider it as woo woo, like the ideal self,
I
having
think
this vision and
I
embodying
think
it.
that's something I'm getting over still too, of introducing these ideas and
Right.
making the language a little bit more acceptable.
I feel so similarly too. Like, because really, at the end of the day, it's not woo woo. It's just, it's not woo woo. It's um, very real aspects of reality. I mean, I'm talking more about like the transpersonal psychology, like the transcendent, the spiritual realms. It's very real things that people aren't aware of, that traditionally has seemed woo woo so out there because it's so different than the mainstream. That's just where our society's at right now. Um, yeah, that's something that I've dealt with. How, I mean, how have you dealt with that, and just sharing some of these ideas with new people who may not understand them before? I know you talked about using the language self as context, but just I guess when you're just talking to people, like how does that go?
I study the fuck out of them so I can really
Yeah.
communicate them on the most simple levels
Hmm.
possible. And when people say they're woo woo or out there, then I give them the scientific data
Hmm.
or the scientific language.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's all we can do. Um, yeah, again, these cultures maybe of the ancient
Hmm.
East, if we go back to India or Nepal and Buddhist practices, or even in Christianity too, that they have this idea that if you're looking at saints or bodhisattvas or these historically prophetic figures, if we have a picture of them before us, or if we sit in their energetic field, then scientifically we mirror them. We
Yes.
mirror their facial
Hmm.
features, and we embody the smile that they have, and our eyes start to take the same shape as their eyes in the picture, and then we can feel our hormonal releases in our bodies. We're going to have a certain set of neurological serotonin, dopamine releases, and hormonal releases, maybe oxytocin or something like this. And then over time, these
Hmm.
things are going to actually take shape as physical features in our body.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
that's how you explain it scientifically, but um, yeah,
Yeah, it's like what you're describing to me is like what I would summarize with the phrase consciousness is contagious. Like kind of like
yeah,
the auric field of someone else, like the people you hang around with, like that's going to naturally be contagious and in a sense you're going to like become that. And it sounds like woo woo to say like the auric field of another person, their consciousness is contagious, but really it's like I mean, what you say with the scientific explanation, like the more type of that energy you're around, like you'll have the same dopamine releases, the same serotonin releases. Like, in a sense,
you
you'll change
you
with
can
them.
even break it down on an even simpler level. Say like if you're in a room full of people and someone walks through the door of that room and they're really angry, the
Hmm.
entire room shifts and you can feel
Yes.
that sense
Hmm.
of danger or anger from that person. You're like, oh, something's off. What the hell is
Yeah.
going
Hmm.
on? It just shifted. And that's what it
Exactly.
is. It's these little energetic,
Hmm.
very subtle things that are going on, and it takes an increased amount of awareness to even
Hmm.
notice it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I know you wanted to touch on psychedelia as well, and it kind of
Yes,
goes into the
I
topic of
did.
psychedelics a
Yeah,
little
we
bit.
can go into that. I know for me personally, like psychedelics have profoundly shaped my life, and I'm interested to hear what experiences you had with them too, and yeah, we can share experiences with that.
Well, my segue was that psychedelics have the potential to show an ideal self, who you could potentially
Mm-hmm.
be. Um, in modern psychotherapy, states like Colorado and California and Oregon have legalized psilocybin, and back in the 1950s, LSD was very much utilized for LSD treatments and very successfully utilized. Nowadays, we have MDMA therapy for depression, we have ketamine therapy for PTSD. It's become way more mainstream. But my own experiences, maybe in my late teens and early 20s, yeah, I absolutely did see, holy cow, this is where I could be. This is the level of
Yeah.
awakeness I could
Mm-hmm.
have. colors are this bright and beautiful. The level of feeling that I have towards my friends and loved ones is this deep. Holy cow. And that's the potential that I can get to. And over time, the idea is integration, right? We have that experience. Maybe we have an apotheosis moment where we're like, I am a god, because it
Hmm.
feels so powerful, so potent. And then the idea is, like, okay, go to a therapist, journal, talk this out, and then make a life structure that allows you to get to that point of ideal self. Um, if you feel that alive and open, what do you want to do in your life for career?
Hmm.
And what do you want to do in your life for meaning and purpose? How do you really interact with your friends and treat them? And then working through all those little blocks along the
Yes.
way that
Hmm.
keep you from doing that.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. Like how psychedelics. I mean, I've had the same experience. I think most people do is where you just feel like you're just more alive. You're more aware. Like I think there's this phrase. I don't know where it comes from, but it's like psychedelics. They don't show you things that aren't there. They kind of unveil all of the limiting perceptions that you've had that reveals what's actually there, which is like this underneath the surface is like this aliveness, this like loving energy. I mean, in my experience with psychedelics, I've just felt so connected to everything, like
Sorry to
this perfect.
interrupt you for a second, but the
Yeah.
word actually means mind manifesting, right?
Yes. Thank you for putting that in there. I forgot that that's what the meaning of psychedelic was. Yes. Yeah, I guess in my experience, like I just feel this super interconnected energy to everything. Like I feel this warmth in my heart, love for everyone in my life, love for all of the suffering that I've gone through. Like that was a huge thing for me with psychedelics. Was like realizing that all of the most brutal moments in my life were actually like the best moments of my life because they made me who I am. And like I just on psychedelics had the experience like where everything I just felt like everything perfectly happened to like lead me to this moment of like realizing I'm not who I thought I was my whole life. I'm something much greater. Identifying with this, everyone and everything, the oneness that we all are, and that completely just shaped my entire life.
Hmm.
That made me realize I want to help other people. I mean, I don't think I would be sitting here today talking about coaching and therapy and like human transformation if I never had tried psychedelics. So I guess just for the viewer, I'm not saying like just go try them like willy nilly. Like do your research and be very intentional about it, and that's a huge component of it. But I just have to give psychedelics a shout out to my life because I would not even be close to where I am today without them.
Well said, and I appreciate your honesty and openness
Mm-hmm.
about it as well. And it sounds like it kind of facilitated your step into wanting to be a coach and do your own inner work, as
Mm-hmm.
well as utilize your own unique characteristics and the things that
Mm-hmm.
you're interested in for your work. Because
Mm-hmm.
we have similar propensities, right? Like it's very psychological,
Mm-hmm.
philosophical, and that naturally kind of goes into things like coaching and counseling.
Very naturally does. And um, yeah, I mean, you said you went through some of your psychedelic experiences in your late teens and early 20s. Was that around the time that you were like working in the hospital with like the radiation therapy and all that?
Oh man, it was a little bit before that.
Mm-hmm.
I was still in self-discovery phase. It was I lived outside of Chicago area,
Mm-hmm.
so we would do things like take psychedelics or MDMA and then go into the city and go to concerts. Maybe it wasn't the I definitely don't
Mm-hmm.
recommend any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Do it in a safe setting and do it in a controlled setting with a therapist. Um, but some of my most profound moments were around my friends, around the campfire, underneath the stars, and having these psychedelic experiences of oneness with myself, and kind of, again, like you said, it's shedding the layers and connecting with my friends is more deeply than I ever have. And it's almost like this telepathy thing between
Yes.
you and them. Like we can read each other, and we're brothers, and we're here for each other. And you look up at the night sky, and that sense of being part of this big cosmic unfolding really sinks in, and you understand the smallness.
Oh, that's
And again,
so
the
so well said.
vividness, the feeling.
Yeah. Just as you're talking, I'm not fully getting goosebumps, but I'm like feeling this like warmth like within me, like that's reminding me of my experiences too, of just like friendship, brotherhood, connectedness to everyone. I think at the end of the day, like that's one of the most important components of life is connections with other people. Like we're all in this together, and I hope one day humanity can kind of experience this greater level of unification on a collective level where we realize we're all one species, we're all in this together, and we don't have all these separate divisions and all these polarizations and bickering back and forth and all this political stuff and all these wars. I hope one day that we as a species can get to that later level of unification. And it's in those psychedelic experiences where I realize that unity is where we're headed. And I want to align my life with that.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah, I think that's a really wonderful vision for the future as well. I think the more people that hold that vision and the more we can collectively talk about that, then it becomes more of a common theme, and so we learn the language to continue to expand that. Um, to go off of that, I think that combining what you said with going back to psychotherapy, the theme of psychotherapy and coaching, is that listening may be the key to connection. These psychedelic experiences of unity, but we can get there just through listening to ourselves and deeply exploring our inner worlds. We can get there by listening to one another and deeply understanding the world of the other person instead of being judgmental towards them. And we can listen to the world around us and understand that we come from this larger natural unfolding that is life. And with that, that's when we reconnect, and that's when we heal.
Exactly. So well said. You should make a video or in your newsletter about that, just that topic of listening. I think that's a beautiful topic that I don't think I've heard too many people say that like listening is like the like what leads to connection. I don't think people talk about it enough, but I completely agree with you. And it like ties in, like you're talking about like, yes, this listening to other people, but what I get is you're talking about this like deeper listening to all of life, to your own experience, to noticing everything around you, this really just deeper listening and attunement with life. And this again goes back to what we've been talking about through this entire call is just that awareness that is aware of what is. And yeah, awareness.
I'll take your suggestion. I'll do something more with that concept.
Yeah. Like, what else did I want to touch upon? I did want to touch upon, how do you see this profession of coaching, counseling, therapy? How do you see it evolving in the coming years? Because what just a thought to maybe prompt you is, I see it becoming something that becomes increasingly important as AI comes into more prominence. AI is going to outsource a lot of work, and people, they find their identities in what they do and what their work is. So I have, I guess, this hypothesis that people are going to be going through these like identity like crises where they don't know who they are and they are kind of like frantically trying to like find themselves. And in my eye, that's kind of where counseling and coaching come in. And I see it having a greater prevalence in the coming years. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think your theory has a lot of reason behind it, and we already see the beginnings of it. AI is starting to come up. We have big, large levels of alcoholism, drug addiction, addiction to screens, isolation, depression and anxiety, where people are really cut off from themselves and one another. And with that comes this sense of meaninglessness and purposelessness as well. Okay, this AI is taking over my job. What the hell do I do with my life? I might as well just sink into nihilism, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the easy solution, and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, um, going back to the psychotherapy concept, I think that psychotherapy is one of the most important fields, or the helping fields are some of the most important fields, because we're gearing towards, again, more empathy, compassion, and communication, and AI is taking over the technological part of it, but the rest of it's going to be, again, art, music, philosophy. How do we create and pursue these creative endeavors? How do we tap into our inherent creativity as human beings, while maybe AI makes our lives more, in a utopian sense, easier? And this is ideal solution or ideal vision, obviously. But that would be the ultimate goal, is really tapping into our inherent creative potentials.
Yes. That's the exact vision that I would like to see as well, is people really tapping into their essence, their creative fountain, and living from that place. And it makes me think again of the client example you gave of helping them find their identity in being a writer. I mean, you help people, you help that person do that, and that's beautiful. And yeah, like I've said, I only see that becoming something more and more prevalent. And I think the demand for male therapists, specifically male therapists and counselors, is so strong, just because I feel like it is a more female dominated field, and I think especially men who have a tendency to be much more closed off from their emotions, a little bit more dense, kind of need that kind of, I guess we can say, masculine kind of companion with them on this journey. So all in all, I wanted to say that I think this is becoming a more prevalent profession. And for anyone watching this, if they're interested, I hope they, even if they don't pursue the career, I guess, can tap into like the listening part of just being there for someone, because that's, like you've iterated, like the most important thing.
Beautifully said, yeah. And again, these are all ways for us to connect deeper with our own sense of understanding of ourselves and others and all of life. And the more we dive into this, then we get to know, okay, what am I feeling underneath? What am I thinking subconsciously? What's under there, and what caused these things from the past? And again, as we said earlier, those things no longer control us when we're aware of them. We begin to harness the reins, and then we begin to choose the future that we choose.
Right.
And that's powerful. It's very powerful. And I wanted to make a comment earlier about the AI thing. I had a buddy that texted me not too long ago, and he said something like, he's big in the AI field, and he's like, man, I'm thinking about going back to school for my master's in psychology. I'm like, yeah, cool, man. That sounds like you're going towards something that's really meaningful for you. And he says, it's the only field that's going to matter soon.
Wow.
This is a guy who's deep into coding, the worlds of coding and artificial intelligence. He programs his own things. He's a software engineer. And he's like, it's psychology and the psychotherapy are the only fields that are going to matter soon.
Wow. I think so many people are going to be going through this identity crisis of just not knowing what to do and what their work is, what their place in the world is. And so I hope that whatever, I mean, like you say, whatever people pursue, it's like them tapping into that deeper essence of them, kind of finding that creative fountain. And I hope that, I mean, this is just my ideal vision. I think with AI, there's going to be actually a lot of turmoil, a lot of division that's created in society about what to do about AI. But my hope is that it helps humanity meet their, I mean, if we're thinking in terms of Maslow's hierarchy, it helps them kind of meet their baseline level needs, so people don't have to strive and fight to work so hard for food, and then it opens up more genuine connection among people, um, frees up more time and energy for them to pursue, I guess, the more self-actualization, the more creative stuff. I
Beautiful,
hope
yeah.
that's the vision. I think there's going to just be a lot of turmoil that comes out with AI, because I think AI is going to kind of render the human species as like no longer kind of like the alpha of the planet. And
What did Terence McKenna say?
mhm,
We're going through the birthing pains of a new collective identity.
yes, and we're going to experience that. And yeah, I hope us as a coach and a counselor can just help facilitate that process in a harmonious way all the more. I guess in essence, that's kind of how I just see my function, AI stuff aside, is just facilitating that process of helping people become more self-actualized, helping people. I think the phrase I like to say it the most is helping people become more themselves.
Hmm.
Hmm.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have these underlying, again, propensities, our
Hmm.
own core characteristics and things that we were truly designed
Hmm.
for once you get down
Yes.
to the core of it.
Hmm.
And everybody has that, and once they find that, then that's their gift to the world, so to speak. That's what they can give. Well said.
Yeah. This has been an amazing discussion, man. I mean, I think I mean, we hit most of the questions that I wanted to get to. Is there something else that you want to kind of tap into? Because I feel kind of like, I mean, I'm down to keep talking more, but um, I don't know. I feel really like alive and like very present in this conversation. It's been a great one.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. Do we have a natural way to segue into something
Yeah.
else?
Maybe. Okay. There's one thing that maybe that I wanted to touch upon that we didn't touch upon is that I feel like there's not that many people that are aware of how powerful coaching and counseling and therapy is. Like, I feel like a lot of people kind of push it to the side, or they say, "Oh, it's too much money," or "I don't need it. It's not legit," or something like that. I feel like that's like a common kind of narrative that people have behind the profession. So I mean, I would love to hear your kind of general thoughts on that, and also just how we can make people more aware of it in general.
The first thing that popped in my mind when you said that is that
Hmm.
the Western world doesn't really look into the inner world,
Hmm.
right? So we tend to be more outwardly focused. We
Hmm.
focus on goals, pursuits, what kind of car do I drive? Can I get the house
Hmm.
with the white picket fence and the 2.5 children and the golden retriever, whatever
Hmm.
the stereotypical American dream is. But we have to be able to look at our inner worlds as well. There's an inner
Yes.
landscape
Hmm.
just as there is an outer landscape. And at the moment, it's still, I want to say taboo, but very unfamiliar for people to even explore or acknowledge that there is an inner world.
Hmm.
And the inner world is a construct of, again, thoughts, emotions, archetypes, these things underneath the hood when we introspect, when we
Hmm.
meditate, when we reflect. And again, we're an outward striving society, and things like silence and stillness and reflection, psychotherapy is tied in with all of those things. It's still not uplifted. Does that make sense?
Yes, it completely makes sense, and I think this is like, yeah, I think you just hit the answer perfectly. It's completely resonating with me how, yeah, like we're kind of, as we're growing up, we're kind of taught, you know, we have to make as much money as we can so we can buy the nice house, have the beautiful romantic partner, you know, feel good about ourselves. It's, yeah, right. Like you say, it's this outward oriented society who finds themselves in things outside of themselves in kind of the material world. And so that completely contrasts with what therapy and counseling is about, which is all about exploring the inner landscape. So in that, yeah, there definitely needs to be a shift in more people exploring their inner landscape and seeing the value of that. So I guess, yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how, as a society, or even on an individual level too, how just the value of that could be recognized in someone. The value of exploring their inner world or potentially going to therapy for someone who otherwise might not want to or know.
I think it's naturally happening as people realize that they're anxious and exhausted and they want
Mm-hmm.
something different from their
Mm-hmm.
anxious and exhausted
Yes.
lives. So there's this natural swing of the pendulum where they're going towards the minimalist movement
Mm-hmm.
and simple lifestyles and tiny houses and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
You start to see those things, and even the emphasis on yoga and meditation and practices of the East.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately representative of people starting to move in that direction. I think that Eastern cultures have had it on lockdown for hundreds, thousands of
Mm-hmm.
years, but even the East has become more westernized. And I hate to quote the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but the West is moving east and the East is moving west, and
Yes.
hopefully there's balance
Mm-hmm.
that's emerging.
Yeah, man. I agree, and I think so many people are getting exhausted and fed up with their lives, and people are wondering why am I not happy? I think it's from that state of just I'm not living the life I want to. I am not fulfilled. There's something more. I think that's something more that people feel within, that their life can be greater in some sense. There has to just be a shift where that something more, you're not going to find it out there. You're going to find it inside yourself. And that's really what the core of all of the Eastern teachings and all of that is kind of getting at, is that happiness and peace and harmony, it's not found out there. It's found within yourself. And I think
The,
that
the
message.
thing
Sorry, go ahead.
The thing is that sounds esoteric, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds because this is where the psychological starts to
Mm-hmm.
merge and get meshed in with the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual. And it sounds like, oh, this is some hokey woo-woo
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's unattainable. But in reality, if we develop characteristics, or if we focus on characteristics of joy and equanimity and
Mm-hmm.
stillness and peace, and if what we focus on is what we become,
Yes.
it's not that out there. It's not that complex to understand, and we
Mm-hmm.
could talk about it on as on these minute scientific hormonal neurological levels, but again, focus on the characteristics, and that's what you become. And if you are always rushed and anxious, then you're going to keep becoming rushed and anxious. If you spend time for restfulness and stillness and the mindfulness, then that's going to balance that out.
Yes. I just hope and I pray that people can be put onto those things more. I guess I mean that brings me back to kind of, yeah, the purpose of why I do this and why I'm doing YouTube too, is to help people become more aware of these things in general. And I imagine that's a huge driving force behind what you're doing too. And you just started your YouTube channel, and yeah, I guess we're just trying to put the message out there in a sense.
100%.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of it's just fun for me, quite honestly. It's stuff that I'm interested in, so
Yeah.
I hope other people
Mm-hmm.
find it interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I, I think I kind of started out in the field like I'm gonna change the world, and I
Mm-hmm.
hope I do have societal impact and
Mm-hmm.
all of these things. But I think ultimately, true change comes about from, as we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
change from the inside and really
Yes.
following pursuits that we're
Mm-hmm.
in love with and we find
Yes.
interesting. And with that love and detail, it benefits the people around us and
I
maybe even
couldn't agree more.
societies around us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like I had this similar kind of narrative as you, where it's like, yeah, I want to change the world. We're gonna do change all these things in the world. And again, it's sort of in that like outward mindset of like the results are in the world, right? And I think what I've come to terms with is like the reason I do what I do is that I just want to be happy and feel fulfilled and have fun and feel excited and feel joy. And what also happens is when I'm feeling those things, naturally other people feel it too. And that's what changes the world.
100%. It
Yeah.
reverberates outwardly.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful that you've
Mm-hmm.
experienced that as well.
Mm-hmm. So in a sense, like it is about you, but it's like naturally, like you're gonna feel happy and fulfilled when you're making other people feel happy and fulfilled. So it's like this cycle, this kind of process that happens. So it's all very
I'm
beautiful.
I'm curious about what in your life maybe that
Mm-hmm.
you've that's lit you up, that
Mm-hmm.
makes you joyful recently.
That makes me joyful recently. To be honest, like having a conversation like this right now, I feel like I'm feeling very high levels of joy. Um, just talking about these things that I'm passionate about, that I sense you're passionate about as well, and we're kind of synergizing based off that. I think it's really recently it's just been connecting with like-minded people like yourself. Maybe this can be my time to advertise the community that I started, which is called the Soulful Synergy Sanctuary, where every Sunday we basically just hop in a call and we chat. We usually ask a question and then we just answer it and we kind of synergize off it. That's why it's called the Synergy Sanctuary. So that's a big part. That's a big um, way that we've connected over the past several weeks and how I've connected with others. And that's always something in my week that I deeply look forward to is just talking with people about this stuff. I was on another podcast a few days ago. That really made me excited. And it's definitely been a shift for me because I think 3 years ago when I was on a podcast, I'd be so nervous. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm not saying the right thing or like I'm going to stutter my words or whatever. And yeah, I think overall, yeah, I'm not as anxious, I'm not as nervous about that, and that's allowed for the true connection to come through, which is recently, especially in 2024, has been what's just lighting me up. Um, like I had a call with a client earlier this morning, and I was just left feeling super invigorated afterwards. Um, so I guess that's the theme: just talking with people, connecting with people, giving off good energy. Um, yeah, that's more than anything, more than me writing or more me creating content. That's been what's lighting me up lately. So, yeah. What about you?
True human connection is what you're talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
that's wonderful. And these big ideas, I think that's a big reason why we connect, and that's why that group that you started is
Mm-hmm.
so powerful. Is because there are these bigger ideas that come about from the conversations, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
maybe everyday topics that stay more superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? We are going to explore meaning and
Mm-hmm.
purpose and transcendentalism and uh, solutions to things. It's profound, and
Mm-hmm.
it allows us a space to meet other people who have those types of mindsets. Um, I I for one, I live currently in the deep south. I live in the northwest corner of Florida, and it tends to be very conservative. So someone put it the other day that there's a maybe a lack of regard for other people's opinions here, and I do notice that. It's like, what church do you go to? Uh, it's very constricting sometimes. So we do have our group of people who have these conversations, who are very open-minded, who are accepting, and who want to discuss not just one point of view, but lots of different points of
Mm-hmm.
views, and come to capital T truth if there is one.
Yeah, so beautifully said, Ben. And I think this question that you asked, like what's been lighting you up lately, it's also something that I think I've asked others lately, and so many people say the same thing. It's true human connection, just connecting with other people. Um, that's what makes life so meaningful. Is having people who are kind of there with you, who give you that unconditional love, that unconditional positive regard, and who you can be wholly yourself around. You don't have to put a mask on around. It's beautiful, and I guess that's a theme that I've witnessed not just in myself, but in others, and that's what really people are yearning for deep down, is that connection beyond all the facades, beyond all of the masks. And yeah, I think within our profession, exactly, that's kind of what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And
Hmm.
since my career has been a little bit more set, and I'm making a little bit more better income, I feel more
Hmm.
stable, and my life feels meaningful for my career itself. But that's allowing me time to really explore life, and
Mm.
I live by the beach, and I'm like, how come I never sit down here more often? I can do that. I can sit with friends. I can sit in nature. And like you said, the truly immersing yourself and being there with it, not trying to be off somewhere else or trying to achieve something else, but genuinely just feeling the sand and feeling the breeze and being in the presence of one another.
Mm.
That's that's where it's at. That's
It is
healing.
where it's at. That's so healing. I love the vision that you gave of the beach and the sand. It just sounds
Man, you'll
peaceful.
have to come out here sometime. If you have the
Yeah.
chance to come to
It,
Florida,
mhm.
please visit. Like
All right.
this place is gorgeous.
All right. I will. I want to do some traveling, so I mean, I want to keep in touch about that. Um, I think okay. There's one more topic that, if you have time, I would love to go into,
Sure.
and that's I guess the entrepreneur aspect. I mean, above all else, like we're coaches and we're counselors, but we're also in a sense like entrepreneurs. In a sense, we have our, I guess, one person businesses. We create content online. I subscribe to your newsletter, and we try to get business from there. I know you've told me in the past that you want to create some maybe courses in the future and like digital products. And yeah, above all else, like we are also kind of entrepreneurs, taking our unique interests and expertise and kind of synthesizing that into a place that people can come and derive value from online. And I'm just curious, what kind of got you into that more entrepreneurship mode? What is that looking like for you? And just what do you think of the entrepreneurship in general? Just your thoughts about it.
I think it kind of goes back to my original
Mm-hmm.
story of working in the hospitals and seeing the nurses and doctors very rushed
Mm-hmm.
and overwhelmed. I vowed once I left mainstream medicine that I wasn't going to make my patients feel that way, and that I was
Mm-hmm.
going to spend as much time as I needed to with them to ensure their healing. So my entrepreneurial endeavors came about from that wish.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to work for a company where I'm getting paid nothing. I can set my own prices, and that gives me more time and freedom. And then I can spend more time with them so they genuinely can feel me there. I'm not rushed. I'm not trying to get to my other 8 patients in the day. I'm there with them, and they feel that. And everybody reaps the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was my idea all throughout my schooling as well. I went through my master's program, and they don't teach you this stuff. They don't teach
Yeah.
you marketing and advertising
Mm-hmm.
and how to be a therapist. They assume that you're going to be a part of, again, mainstream systems.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I want to say? The I think it's the future to go down an entrepreneurial route or a solopreneur route, as maybe some of these systems are crumbling a little bit and people realize they're not working, and we have the internet that allows everybody to have their own business. It's a natural route. uh, there's so many people making money, and education, the educational aspect, if you become a master of what you're teaching and
Mm-hmm.
truly dedicate yourself to the study of it, then you have something of value to give.
Right.
And I'm not saying like do it to sell things, but
Mm-hmm.
do it because you love it, and perhaps you'll make an income because other people will also find the value. Does that make sense?
Exactly. I think there's a quote. I don't remember who it's from. Might have been by like Naval, um,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's the quote where it's like, soon in the future we'll have 7 billion one person businesses because everyone will be a solopreneur. Everyone will kind of be their own business, which is just a representation of their interests and their skills and their attributes. Like what gift can they give to society? And that goes back to kind of like the creative fountain that we were tapping into earlier. And self-actualization is, you know, I truly believe everyone has a gift within them that they can give to the world. And in a sense, you know, as we progress as a society, life will be about, and all of our institutions and education systems will reflect helping people actually find that gift within them and giving it to the world. And in a sense, that'll kind of be like 7 billion different one-person businesses, even though we'll still have all these connected institutions. But I guess people will be really valued for what their kind of essence is, and that'll kind of be their business or entrepreneurship journey. Is that making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think again that's a beautiful vision, and we can work towards that. And the technology and AI is allowing us to go down that route,
Yeah.
slowly but surely.
Yeah. Where do you see yourself in like your average day in like 10, 15 years or 20 years, just with like the entrepreneurship journey?
Ooh,
Yeah.
oh man, that's pretty far in the future, but I do have a vision. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I really want I want to be in nature. I want my own home and my own little healing center in nature. And my psychotherapeutic practice will be out of that. People will come visit there, absorb the stillness of that environment, get back to themselves, and return back to their lives as they need to. But I aim to hold meditation retreats and psychotherapy retreats, and I'm also a martial artist, so I really want a bit of a like a dojo in nature where people can also practice these martial arts as well. That's like big,
Mm-hmm.
long vision, and I'll keep striving towards it.
I love the vision. That's very beautiful. It's a kind of synthesis of all your interests, martial arts, of psychotherapy. You're in nature. You're connected to the earth. It sounds exactly like just a combination of all your interests. Very beautiful vision.
Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
How about on your side? Where do you see your entrepreneurial endeavors going, and
Yeah,
why do you find them so important to you?
well, it's a very similar vision to you, and I guess the way I see it going is I continue with the coaching business. I'll continue to get my certifications, and you know, right now in the early stages, it's really a lot of upfront work. You know, I'm trying to make videos. I'm doing my weekly newsletter, or at least trying to make it weekly. Um, you know, trying to stay on with clients. And then I also, because I'm not making enough money yet, I still have a part-time job that also takes up a significant aspect of my time, about 20 hours a week. So it's like really like this, it is in a sense sort of like this like traditional, what everyone describes as like this entrepreneurship like grind where I'm working like 60 hours a week. And I get like kind of burnt out with it sometimes. And so I guess in 10 years, I do see myself, well, yeah, not having to work that part-time job anymore, but also just having more free time that allows me to actually connect with my friends. You know, if I have a partner in the future, to spend more time with her. Um, you know, I see myself as similar vision as you, as being in nature, being on land, and you know, not just only me being there, only me and my partner being there, but you know, it's kind of for everyone to be there. You know, if I have clients, like I'd love for them to come stay there and do in-person, like long-term in-person coaching with them. I'd love, you know, just have my friends come and stay there. It's like I have this vision to be in nature and have land, but it's not just for myself. It's kind of for everyone to benefit from. So I see myself hosting retreats. You know, maybe the regulations on psychedelics will be different in the future, and I could get training in facilitating psychedelic retreats. I know right now there's a lot of laws that would restrict that, but you know, maybe that'll be different in the future. That's something I'm really passionate about. But all in all, it's just a very similar vision to you, where it's like kind of a combination of all my interests. I want to have a basketball court there because I love basketball. I've been playing basketball my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I don't know if I'm like if I have a kid in the future and like, you know, and or if like I want to become like just some like middle school basketball coach or something, then I can like host practices there. But
Man, that's an awesome vision. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's
it's very similar
your
to you.
version of my martial arts is
Yeah,
basketball.
yeah. We're very similar. Very beautiful vision. Love that we can connect on
It's
that.
cool because I was
Hmm.
just at karate last night and
Hmm.
some new kids came in. I got to teach these little kids and it kind of sparked
Hmm.
my love for teaching again. Um, similar boat to you, man. I love teaching kids. I love teaching in general.
Hmm.
It allows you to feel invigorated.
Yeah, it's like when you see that progress in someone, like for me, when you see that progress in someone like improving or like something illuminating with them, like, oh, like this is how I do it, this is how I do this thing, or this is how I improve, and then they actually start doing that and they start seeing results. It's so incredibly satisfying. Like whether it's with martial arts or therapy or basketball, it's like just seeing that growth in someone. It's like it brings so much joy to my being.
Cool. Let's help each other get there,
Mhm.
man. We
Yes,
got this.
let's do it. We do. I mean, we're in this together. Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on everything. So, I might wrap this up here. I wanna mention you in the description. So if you, for the audience, if you want to just tell them how they can connect with you, yeah, please tell them that.
Yeah, man, it's under just my name for everything. My name is
Hmm.
Max Komes, Komes. My website is maxkomes.com. My Instagram is max.comas. My Twitter is maxcomas. It's all the stuff.
All right.
Um, my psychotherapy sessions, I can only do psychotherapy under supervision in the state of Florida. So if you're in the state of Florida, I would be happy to work with you. I would love that. And yeah, again, man, I appreciate the opportunity and the time, and I appreciate the friendship wholeheartedly. It's been a
Yes.
cool last
Mhm.
couple months.
Me as well. Yeah. All right. Max Comas, I'll put all of his links in the description so you guys can follow him on there. And with that, I will be ending this podcast. Peace, guys.
Appreciate you, brother.
Mhm.